Though it's a passing league, the running back is still a useful position in the NFL. In this video, I'll be ranking my top 32 running backs headed into the 2024 NFL season. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop a like and subscribe if you're new, and let's get started. Number 32, Zach Moss, Cincinnati Bengals. Moss filled in nicely during Jonathan Taylor's absence, rushing for 4.3 yards per carry and 5 touchdowns. He had a decent 36 missed tackles forced as well, but he did have just 2.71 yards after contact per carry, and he had 5 drops on 35 targets, which isn't great. This is also the first year that Moss has gone over 160 carries, so he still has to prove that he can be a bell cow back. Right now, I think he's a serviceable running back that should fit well into the Bengals offense. Number 31, Zamir White, Las Vegas Raiders. White only got 104 carries last season, but he made the most of them. He had 4.3 yards per carry and 3.21 yards after contact per carry. He was also very reliable in the receiving game, catching 15 passes on 17 targets with no drops. It isn't a stretch to say that he outplayed Josh Jacobs last year. White now being the primary back, I think he could have a nice season and move up this list. Number 30, Rachaad White, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Rachaad White is a top 10 receiving back in the NFL right now. That really isn't debatable. His problem is that he isn't a good runner. Despite having the second most attempts in the league, White failed to even crack 1,000 yards, and that's because he had just 3.6 yards per carry. He was 17th in missed tackles forced with 39, and he had just 2.53 yards after contact per attempt. Reminder, he had the second most carries in the NFL. His vision is lackluster, and he won't always hit the hole made for him. Is he a valuable receiving back? Yes, and that's what keeps him in the top 32 for me, but he needs to improve as a runner or Bucky Irving is going to take his job. Number 29, DeAndre Swift, Chicago Bears. I think DeAndre Swift is the most overrated running back in the NFL. His 1,000 yards and 4.6 yards per carry were simply because of the Eagles' offensive line. Stats don't tell the whole story of Swift like they do for other running backs. On film, DeAndre Swift has some of the worst vision out of any starting running back. He will constantly bounce runs outside when he doesn't need to, which will cause him to end up getting tackled for no gain. He could have a well-blocked run up the middle, but still take it wide. I don't think you could pay this man to run up the middle. He could have so many more yards if he just had halfway decent vision, but he doesn't. It's why the Lions let him go, and now the Eagles let him go. Swift is now going from the Eagles' offensive line, which is one of the best units in the league, to the Bears, which isn't bad, but also isn't great. It would not surprise me in the least if Swift has a very bad year, unless he can learn to read his line and actually take the holes given to him. The only reason he's at 29 and not lower is because he's shifty and decent at forcing missed tackles, but he needs to clean up his vision. Number 28, Devin Singletary, New York Giants. Singletary is the definition of a serviceable back. He doesn't wow you with anything, but he isn't going to be bad either. He isn't bad in the receiving game, and he had a nice 4.2 yards per carry last year. He also only had 1 fumble on 216 carries, which is very good. It's an obvious downgrade from Saquon, but Singletary is not going to be a liability there either. Number 27, Khalil Herbert, Chicago Bears. Yes, I think Khalil Herbert is better than DeAndre Swift. Not only did Herbert have better production relative to volume than Swift did, despite Swift having the Eagles' offensive line blocking for him, Herbert just doesn't have the blatant vision problems Swift has. If I were the Bears, I'd be starting Herbert at least on first and second downs because Swift does bring more upside in the receiving game, but Herbert is just a better overall back, no question. Number 26, Ramondre Stevenson, New England Patriots. Stevenson was having a solid season before suffering a high ankle sprain in week 13. He managed to get 4 yards per carry, but only had 10 runs of 10 or more yards. He had just 2.8 yards after contact per carry. However, he was the only decent player on that offense apart from Michael Wenu, so defenses could stack the box to contain him, which hurt his production. I don't think the ankle injury will have too much of an effect, but you simply never know. I don't think Stevenson's a bad running back, but he's got to prove that he can return to 2022 form next season. Number 25, Alvin Kamara, New Orleans Saints. Kamara wasn't bad last season, but it definitely was one of the worst years of his career. He didn't even crack 4 yards per carry, and had just 2.51 yards after contact per carry. He didn't fumble at all, but he just wasn't as explosive as he has been. He's still a great receiving back, but he has lost a step as a runner. He also recently turned 29, which is like 80 in running back years. Kamara isn't a liability back there, but it's clear that he's on the decline. Number 24, Brian Robinson, Washington Commanders. Robinson is coming off a productive season, averaging 4.1 yards per carry and nearly 3 yards after contact per carry. He isn't the fastest guy, but he's not slow either. He isn't the strongest, but he definitely isn't weak. He isn't massive, but he's good sized. He's just overall a solid back. He also had near 400 yards in the receiving game, which was nice to see. The 4 fumbles on just 178 carries is a little concerning, but I think with some coaching, he can clean that up. Robinson isn't the best back in the world, but he's a solid guy that you'll take any day of the week. Number 23, Devon Achane, Miami Dolphins. Other than Nick Chubb, who we'll get to, Devon Achane was the hardest person to rank. Statistically, he was the most productive back in the entire league last year. He had 8 yards per carry, he had over 5 yards after contact per carry, he forced a missed tackle on a quarter of his carries, had no drops. He was the literal highest graded running back last year, ahead of Christian McCaffrey. Point is, the talent's there, and that's obvious. Achane is so unbelievably fast, but he's also incredibly elusive as well. So why is a guy with an obvious and same level of talent down at 23? It's because 1, he only carried the ball 100 times, so we have an extremely small sample size. 2, he suffered multiple injuries last year, so there are durability concerns. And 3, he was playing against teams that were almost never able to stack the box because they had to worry about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I need to see more before I put him in my top 15 to 10, but if he takes that starting job from Mostert and even has 3/4 of the production he had last year and has over 200 carries and Mostert stays healthy, then he will easily climb into the top 10 or maybe even the top 5. Number 22, Najee Harris, Pittsburgh Steelers. Harris is coming off a career 4.1 yards per carry carry, the first time he's gone over 4, and he got over 3 yards after contact per carry for the first time as well. Harris has always been criticized for being slow, but speed isn't part of his game. He's a true power back through and through. He's gone over 1,000 yards every year of his career, and he has dealt with some very bad quarterback play throughout his career, which allows other teams to stack the box more. With the way the NFL is nowadays, power backs just simply aren't as effective as speedy, elusive backs, but Harris is still a solid and consistent player. Number 21, Joe Mixon, Houston Texans. Mixon has never been an outstanding back, but he's been consistently solid for his entire career, and that's pretty good for a running back in today's era. He did recently just turn 28, so there is a regression concern, but I don't think he's a bad player. In an offense like Houston's, which helped Devin Singletary reach a career high in yards, I think Mixon can thrive. He won't be outstanding, but he definitely won't be bad either. Number 20, Tony Pollard, Tennessee Titans. It's safe to say that Pollard did not meet the expectations many had of him. He barely cracked 1,000 yards with 4 per carry, which is a career low. He was super inconsistent. He had 1 week where he had over 6 yards per carry, the next he didn't even crack 3.5. He also didn't even crack 4 yards per carry in 5 of the final 6 games. There's a reason that Cowboys let him go after just 1 season. I don't think Pollard is necessarily bad, but he's proven that he cannot be a bell cow back. I do think that makes him a good fit with the Titans, however, because they're good to split carries with Tajay Spears. Number 19, Jaylen Warren, Pittsburgh Steelers. Warren was ultra productive last season, throwing over 5 yards per carry and forcing an insane 53 missed tackles on just 149 carries. He simply outplayed Najee Harris. He was slightly inconsistent, and the fumbles are a bit concerning, but that's a little understandable considering last year was his second in the league. I think Warren would be higher if he was not splitting carries with Harris, but he's proven that he's very talented. Number 18, Aaron Jones, Minnesota Vikings. Jones had a good season production-wise, but multiple leg injuries caused him to miss 6 games. He's also going to be 30 soon, and there are questions if he's going to be able to stay healthy. When he was on the field, however, he was very good. His last 2 games of the regular season, plus his 2 playoff games, were absolutely excellent. His only real problem was a 16.7% drop rate, so he definitely needs to clean that up. But if he can stay healthy, I think he'll have a good season. Number 17, David Montgomery, Detroit Lions. Montgomery did not make it easy for Gibbs to get playing time, as Monty himself was very good. He had 13 touchdowns and a career high 4.6 yards per carry. He's never been the fastest guy, but he's been consistent and reliable. He doesn't fumble often, he doesn't drop the ball often. He's that player that if he needs something done, more than often than not, he'll do it and do it well. He's the thunder to Jahmyr Gibbs' lightning, and even though I have Gibbs ranked higher than Montgomery, as you'll see later, I still think Montgomery is good enough to keep a split role in the Lions offense. Number 16, Nick Chubb, Cleveland Browns. I debated just leaving Chubb off this list simply because we have no idea what we're going to get from him. He was amazing before the injury, averaging an insane 6.1 yards per carry, but this is his second major knee injury that he suffered, and who honestly knows if he's going to be anywhere close to the same player he was before. It's a real toss-up because you can put him as high as 3 or as low as 30, so I decided to put him in the middle and see what happens. But everyone knows how talented a healthy Chubb was before the injury. He was arguably the best in the league before the 2023 season, but the questions are just too much for me to put him any higher than this. For all we know, he could come out and just not be able to move like he used to. We're just going to have to wait and see. Number 15, James Cook, Buffalo Bills. Cook enjoyed a breakout second season in Buffalo, averaging over 4.7 yards per carry and having over 1,500 scrimmage yards. He had 33 runs of over 10 plus yards, and the only reason he had just 2 rushing touchdowns was because Josh Allen had 15 of them, and Latavius Murray, yes, he's still in the league, had 4. The only thing Cook really needs to fix are his drop issues. He had 6 drops on 53 targets for a 12% drop percentage. However, if your running back's only real problem is drop issues, you can live with that. Cook is a very good, young running back that's only going to get better. Number 14, James Conner, Arizona Cardinals. Conner quietly had an outstanding year last season. He averaged 5 yards per carry and was second in the NFL in missed tackles forced. He also had nearly 4 yards after contact per carry and had no drops on 31 targets. He had 31 runs of over 10 yards as well. This is the first year that Conner has done something like this, and he is 29 years old, so I can't put him too high, but anybody not putting him in the top 15 is crazy. He's an extremely valuable piece of this Cardinals offense. Number 13, Kenneth Walker, Seattle Seahawks. Walker actually had a bit of a dip in production from his rookie season, with less yards per carry and less 10+ yard runs, but he was still very good. He's incredibly explosive, he doesn't fumble, he was good in the receiving game, and he had an excellent 56 missed tackles forced. He can be a bit inconsistent at times, which is why the Seahawks drafted Zach Charbonnet, but overall, Walker is a young, traitsy back that's only going to improve. Number 12, Raheem Mostert, Miami Dolphins. Mostert did something almost no running backs do, break out at 31 years old. He casually went out there and put up 21 total touchdowns, leading the entire NFL in rushing touchdowns and tying with Offensive Player of the Year Christian McCaffrey for the most total touchdowns. He had a 91.1 PFF rushing grade, which is only behind teammate Devon Achane, and honestly blew my and many others' expectations. However, he isn't ranked higher for some of the same reasons Achane isn't higher. The defenses he played against were always focused on Hill and Waddle instead of Mostert, and this is the first year he's had a season like this. He is also 32, so there's a chance he regresses, but his career year did not go unnoticed by me, by fans, by everyone, and he is a certified top 15 running back and potentially could be higher if he repeats next season. Number 11, Travis Etienne, Jacksonville Jaguars. Etienne had an interesting second season for sure. He cracked 1,000 yards once again, but averaged a mere 3.8 yards per carry, which is significantly worse from his 5.1 in his rookie year. But this year, he was a lot more active in the receiving game, and oh yeah, he led the entire NFL in missed tackles forced. It was honestly a polarizing season that puts Etienne as both a top 5 running back and a bottom 5 running back at the same time. But I think the good parts overall outweighed the bad parts, and that puts him at 11 on my list. Number 10, Isaiah Pacheco, Kansas City Chiefs. Pacheco is never going to have crazy yardage simply because he's on the Chiefs, but damn is he a a good running back. I'm sure everyone has seen his running style by now. It's not like any I've ever seen before. He plays like every snap is his last, and I absolutely love that. He's one of the most fun backs to watch every Sunday, and he makes the most out of every single opportunity he gets. If there's a stat for effort, Pacheco would lead it by a mile. Number 9, Josh Jacobs, Green Bay Packers. Jacobs regressed significantly in 2023. He simply just lacked the explosiveness and agility that he had in 2022. But the reason for that was that he was overworked in 2022. He had nearly 400 touches that year, which just wore him down and caused him to not be the same player in 2023. He had career lows in pretty much every stat. Yards per carry, yards after contact per carry, missed tackles forced, touchdowns, 10-yard runs, you name it. So why is he still at 9? Well, I'm not going to drop a guy too far for one bad season. He did lead the NFL in yards in 2022. If he faces another season like last year, he will fall further down this list. Number 8, Jonathan Taylor, Indianapolis Colts. A 2022 injury limited Taylor to just 10 games last season, but he still played well. He obviously wasn't 2021 Taylor, but he reminded everyone how good he was. He had 23 runs of 10 plus yards despite carrying the ball just 169 times, and he had a nice 4.4 yards per carry. He only fumbled one time as well. It was very noticeable when Taylor was out there and when he wasn't, as in games with Taylor, the Colts averaged 132.5 rushing yards per game. Without him, they averaged just 104.9 rushing yards per game. Taylor's so does 25, that combined with a healthy Anthony Richardson, the Colts running attack is going to be very scary next season. Number 7, Kyren Williams, Los Angeles Rams. Williams had a monster breakout season last year. Despite missing 5 games in 2023, Williams still finished 3rd in the entire league in rushing yards, averaging 5 per carry. He also had 12 touchdowns, which was near Raheem Mostert levels of touchdown production when you consider the 12 games played. Point is, Williams really helped this Rams offense out last year, and with him just being 24 years old, he's only going to get better. Number 6, Jahmyr Gibbs, Detroit Lions. Many people, myself included, question the Lions' selection of Jahmyr Gibbs at 12th overall, but man, do we look stupid now. Gibbs was unbelievable last year. He had 5.2 yards per carry and forced 40 missed tackles on just 182 attempts. He's so unbelievably explosive, and once he's in the open field, he's gone. Nobody's catching him. He had 27 runs of 10 or more yards and 10 rushing touchdowns to go along with that. And if that wasn't enough, he had another 316 yards and a touchdown through the air. Gibbs blew past everybody's expectations, and I think he's going to have an insane season next year, even though he'll be splitting carries with David Montgomery. Gibbs is just that good. Number 5, Saquon Barkley, Philadelphia Eagles. Barkley is coming off a disappointing final year in New York, where he averaged just 3.9 yards per carry and missed out on a 1,000-yard season, but everything about the Giants was disappointing. And yet again, Barkley was the only player on that offense that defenses had to game plan for. Plus, the Giants' offensive line out of Andrew Thomas wasn't exactly spectacular. Barkley was put in a situation where he was kind of doomed to fail, but he's still very talented, and I don't really knock him for this down year. He stayed healthy for the most part, only missing a couple games early, but that's it. And in the long run, I think the Giants are going to regret letting Saquon go, especially now that he signed with their division rival. Number 4, Breece Hall, New York Jets. Hill immediately shouted any concerns about his torn ACL with an electric game versus the Bills in week 1, and then never looked back. He had near 1,600 scrimmage yards with 4.5 yards per carry. He managed to get almost 1,000 rushing yards despite teams being able to put 20,000 guys in the box because of the absolute horror movie that was the Jets QB play. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, he led the entire NFL in receiving yards by running back. Reminder, these were the Jets QBs he was playing with. He was the only bright spot on this offense other than Garrett Wilson, and if Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy, defenses won't be able to put everyone in the box, and I think Hall can absolutely explode. I'm talking potentially 1,500 rushing yards or more. He's that good. Number 3, Bijan Robinson, Atlanta Falcons. Robinson was a generational talent heading into the 2023 draft, and last season, he showed that and more. He managed to get nearly 1,500 scrimmage yards despite the fact that Arthur Smith was doing whatever he could to make sure Bijan didn't touch the ball. Bijan averaged just 16 touches per game. 16. If he had averaged 23 touches per game, he would have gone over 2,000 scrimmage yards. Robinson showed everything that was so great about him in college. The speed, the vision, the unstoppable jump cut. He had it all. And that's not even it. Bijan managed to do all this despite having Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke as his quarterbacks, meaning defenses could just stack the box and prep for Bijan. And he still managed to put up these numbers. Now with a competent quarterback and an OC that isn't Arthur Smith, Bijan can finally match his production with his talent. Number 2, Derrick Henry, Baltimore Ravens. Henry certainly wasn't as good as his past couple seasons, but he was still excellent last year. He finished second in rushing yards only behind Christian McCaffrey. He forced 57 missed tackles. He had a nice 3.32 yards after contact per carry, and he also added 12 touchdowns. King Henry was still in full effect, even if the stats dipped a little bit. Like the last 3 players on this list, Henry was the focal point of an offense that had below average to awful quarterback play throughout the season, so he had to deal with more players in the box than an average running back. Henry's still the most difficult back to tackle on one-on-one. He's the most difficult back to tackle overall, and he plus Lamar Jackson is going to be an absolute nightmare for any team they play against. Number 1, Christian McCaffrey, San Francisco 49ers. Is this even a surprise? McCaffrey is the only player last season to exceed 2,000 scrimmage yards. He tied with Raheem Mostert for most touchdowns at 21. He won the Offensive Player of the Year award. He had 5.4 yards per carry. He had 60 missed tackles forced. He had 1 drop on 79 targets. I mean, this dude is literally everything. He's the best runner in the NFL. He's the best receiving back in the NFL. He can throw the ball like a quarterback because why the hell not? I mean, at this point, just put him at kicker, point guard, and shortstop because I'm sure he'll be the lead at those too. McCaffrey's the best running back in the NFL. That isn't a debate. And anybody else at this spot is just wrong. But that's it. Those are my top 32 running backs headed into the 2024 season. Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Comment below. If you enjoyed this video, then please like and subscribe if you're new, and that's it for me. See ya.